All right. Can everybody still hear me? Can everybody still hear me? Test, test. Everybody still hear me? Okay. Loud and clear? Loud and clear. Okay, good, good, good. I just wanted to turn that music down so we can all hear this. All right. Newly released. Hold on. Let's highlight this all again. All right. We're going to go over this together. This is all the Chat GPT summarization of everything that's been going on. Newly released 2025 JFK files, key findings and revelations. President John F. Kennedy and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy in the Dallas motorcade minutes before the assassination on November 22nd, 1963. In 2025, the final batch of long classified JFK assassination files were released, shedding new light on this enduring mystery. And this is just like a photo showing JFK with his wife the day that he was assassinated in Texas. So, says here, after decades of anticipation, the National Archives in 2025 made public approximately 80,000 pages of documents related to President Kennedy's 1963 assassination. This release, ordered by President Donald Trump and carried out in early 2025, represents the last of the classified JFK files, effectively completing the disclosure mandated by Congress in the 1992 JFK Records Act. Researchers and the public can now examine thousands of previously secret records, ranging from CIA and FBI reports to diplomatic cables and internal memos. Below is a detailed summary of never before disclosed findings and their significance. Okay. All right. Sounds like we're getting spicy here. New evidence related to the assassination. Oswald's escape plans. Newly released CIA files detail Lee Harvey Oswald's activities in Mexico City weeks before the assassination. Officials at the time suspected Oswald was seeking visas from the Cuban and Soviet embassies to make a quick escape after assassinating the president, according to an October 1963 CIA report. This suggests Oswald may have contemplated fleeing through Cuba or the USSR following the shooting, a detail not confirmed in earlier public records. Threats against Oswald and missed warnings. An FBI transcript from November 24, 1963, now declassified, reveals FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover discussing an anonymous threat to Oswald's life received the night before Jack Ruby shot Oswald. Okay. Hoover said the FBI informed police of the threat, but Dallas authorities failed to act in protecting Oswald. This previously classified warning and the failure to prevent Oswald's murder in custody fuels speculation that Oswald was silenced before he could speak, a point long noted by conspiracy theorists. All right, let's see. It goes on to say, new forensic mysteries. House investigation files withheld until now show that FBI was unable to locate the original fingerprints lifted from the rifle that Oswald allegedly used. Dallas police had turned over those prints in 1963, but the 1978 FBI officials admitted the prints were misplaced, calling any attempt to find them a mammoth research effort. This startling lapse, the loss of key forensic evidence, was not public knowledge previously. It doesn't prove a conspiracy, but it highlights possible mishandling of evidence related to the case. Second shooter speculation. While the newly released files contain no hard evidence of a second gunman in Dealey Plaza, the disclosures have reignited debate. Notably, the head of a new congressional declassification task force, Representative Anna Paulina Luna, openly stated her belief that two shooters were involved. This reflects how some officials are interpreting the trove. However, historians reviewing the actual documents have not found proof of another shooter, and the consensus remains that Oswald was the lone gunman. The files do not include various witness accounts, the files do include various witness accounts and investigative leads that were pursued, in parentheses, and ruled out over the years, which conspiracists may pore over for anomalies, but no official conclusion has changed. Okay. Well, that's pretty crazy. That's all this stuff about the mishandling of the fingerprints. That's like classic, though. I mean, that happens. You know, people that are investigating something, if you don't do some like procedures the proper way, you know, sometimes, you know, evidence can go bad or can sour or can not be usable or admissible in court and stuff like that. So, I mean, if people do that now, sometimes occasionally, which they probably do because people make mistakes and human beings are fallible and they're going to make mistakes. I'm sure that they were making mistakes back then too. What's going on? How's everybody doing? Welcome on. Hello, everyone. Gnarly Play, Miranda Griffin, Trevor, Tuck, Nikki, Ashley, Hated One, David. What's going on? Moon Man. How's it going, everybody? If you're just joining us right now, we are pouring through the JFK. Basically, I took Chat GPT, I typed in the new link to the actual JFK files that were just released, and I asked ChatGPT to release key findings never before released, in the hopes that maybe we could find something that it was able to sift through quickly because it's AI and much faster than me doing it myself or other people doing it. And so that's what we're doing. We're just going to look through and see what ChatGPT was able to come up with. Now, obviously, it's AI that was designed by certain individuals, so who knows if it's going to be right on the point. It's not going to be as good as a human being going through it necessarily, but it's better than nothing, and it's quicker than having to wait for other news organizations to tell you what you should think about it or what kind of new revelations came out about it, because it's just a computer, So, all right. Let's see. No hard evidence. Yeah, no conclusions. Okay, so next piece says previously classified details on government involvement and conspiracy theories. This ought to be good. All right. CIA surveillance of Oswald. The new files provide concrete evidence that Oswald was on the CIA's radar well before 1963. A formerly top secret CIA memo reveals Oswald had been placed on a CIA watch list for mail interception as early as November 1959, right after he defected to the Soviet Union. In fact, U.S. intelligence was routinely opening Oswald's mail during 1959 to 1962, long before he became a household name. This shows that the government was monitoring Oswald's activities along with other Cold War persons of interest, but evidently did not deem him an immediate threat to the president. It also underscores the CIA's extensive domestic surveillance programs, including reading mail of private citizens like novelist John Steinbeck, that remained secret for decades. All right, let's see here. It says the CIA claims of non-involvement. Okay, in response to lingering suspicions, the CIA has formally reiterated in newly released records that it never engaged or used Oswald as an agent or asset. The declassified files contain no evidence that Oswald was working for any U.S. agency. This undercuts theories that Oswald was part of a CIA plot. Likewise, a newly revealed assessment by a former KGB officer after reviewing Soviet files concluded that Oswald, quote, was never controlled by Soviet intelligence, refuting notions that he was a Soviet or Cuban agent. These disclosures bolster the view that Oswald was an isolated actor, though they also highlight how closely multiple intelligence agencies were scrutinizing him. Okay. We had him on No Shot. It's the OG. We had him on our radar. Yeah, I know. It's the classic. We had him on our radar. Dang it. Just missed it. Crap. Limescale. Oswald is a fictional person made up by the CIA to cover up an assassination done by the mob. I don't know about that. I think Oswald is a real guy, and Jack Ruby is a real guy too. But I've never delved real deep into this stuff. This is, again, we're just taking Chat GPT and typing in the link to the new JFK assassination files and having it tell us what new things have come out as a result of this that haven't been formally released. Because again, it's going to be faster than me doing it. It's going to be faster than somebody else doing it. And I figured everybody wanted to know what was in there, like a summarization, if you will. Okay. Next piece, it says Soviet and Cuban angles. Some documents delve into foreign reactions and possible connections. One FBI memo kept secret until now reported that communist officials in the USSR were deeply upset by JFK's death and suspected a far-right conspiracy in America. According to an informant, Soviet leaders believe, quote, there was some well-organized conspiracy on the part of the ultra-right to effect a coup, end quote, in the United States. They even feared Kennedy's assassination might be used as a pretext to attack Cuba or the USSR. This shows that even the Kremlin entertained conspiracy theories, blaming anti-communist extremists, a reminder of how the event's context was viewed as a Cold War flashpoint. However, nothing in the files corroborates any Soviet or Cuban involvement in the assassination. In fact, Cuba's government and the KGB appeared to have been caught by surprise and reacted with concern, according to these reports. Okay, well, that's interesting. I wonder why they referred to it as a far-right conspiracy. That's an interesting way to put that. I don't know. Was Jack Ruby or Oswald considered far-right? Wasn't Oswald supposed to be like a professed communist? I don't remember. All that Oswald talk wasn't for me. After the fact, codename Hard Hat, codename Hard Hat. We don't have the full story and most likely never will. I don't know. It's crazy it took this long. Yeah, hard to assume there's nothing hidden. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if he didn't have Nazi ties. German immigration from Argentina and Brazil after the war and coup would make sense. Yeah, I don't know. Tough to say. It's tough to say. I'm not sure. Breaking news, Jack Ruby bleeped Oswald. Oh my God, I can't believe this. Wow, breaking news. Oswald was a communist. That's what I thought. Appreciate that, Ragnar. That's always what I believed, is what I've been told, is that Oswald was a communist, which communists are not considered far right. So it's confusing why it said that the USSR suspected a far right conspiracy. I don't know. There's a lot. I mean, obviously during this time, it was like a real big, everybody was like on edge about the Soviet Communist Party, and they were, the Red Menace and all that stuff. Like there's a lot of, especially in the government, people were very afraid of communism trying to leak in everywhere. And that's part of the reason why we potentially got involved in Vietnam, was because they wanted to stop the spread of communism and all this other stuff. And there's probably a plethora of other things that we stopped. I don't have a theory because I don't know enough about this. This is just like me regurgitating what ChatGPT summarized as being things that could be considered key findings never before released. Because I didn't read through all of these new releases, and I haven't delved deep into this thing. Don't know. I just think this is interesting, and I think it's fun. It's a fun topic because there's so much things that people don't know, that there's so much speculation on all sides of the fence. These are the after the fact investigation. I want to see the files before the assassination. Yeah, I'd like to see those too. I don't know if we'll ever see those. How Kennedy left the Cuban resistance stranded on the beach without support. Yeah, I remember hearing a podcast. I think Joe Rogan had somebody on his show that was talking about that at one point, but I don't remember the details on it. I know that there was a bunch of guys that were part of the former the OSS. So the OSS, which is the predecessor to the CIA, apparently there was a bunch of guys involved in that beach landing that were prior OSS guys. And the theory goes, at least the speculation goes, that because they were kind of left on the beach and got captured by the Cubans, that there was a lot of animosity from within the OSS towards Kennedy after that, which people think is the reason why the CIA was involved in the assassination and all that. I don't know enough about it to be able to say definitively without a doubt, but that's what some people have alleged. So anyway, let's see here. Next piece, Mafia plots and anti-Castro schemes. Let's read that. All right, so the Trove confirms long-rumored CIA and organized crime cooperation. Yes, this is definitely something, people know that the CIA worked with the Mafia for different things, and obviously anti-Castro and anti-Cuba stuff. Let's see, an organized crime cooperation, which, while not directly tied to JFK's murder, formed part of the conspiracy landscape. A 1975 report, now redacted, details an outlandish CIA plan to recruit Mafia bosses to kill Fidel Castro, Kennedy's nemesis in Cuba. For example, the CIA offered Chicago mobster Sam Giancana $150K to arrange Castro's assassination. They even brainstormed wild ideas like planting an exploding seashell in Castro's favorite diving spots and contaminating his scuba gear with lethal bacteria. Interesting. These schemes were ultimately aborted and were previously known in outline from 1970s investigations, but the actual proposals and correspondence are now available unfiltered. While such CIA Mafia plots were aimed at Cuba, not Kennedy, their exposure lends credence to theories that rogue elements, organized crime, Cuban exiles, or rogue agents, had motive and means in 1963. Notably, the files show no evidence that these actors were behind JFK's assassination. For instance, one newly released summary concludes, quote, "There is nothing to indicate the outfit, Chicago mob, set up by JFK's assassination," end quote. Despite their intense anti-Castro efforts, still the mere fact that the U.S. government secretly conspired with mobsters to kill Castro, kept hidden at the time, has fueled speculation about parallel conspiracies against Kennedy. Yeah, because the CIA was trying to assassinate Castro, and they had spitballed and war gamed this stuff and like had all these proposed ideas that people had drawn up. But because they did that, people automatically assume that the CIA did the same thing to Kennedy. Now, it doesn't sound like there's any information about that. Again, I haven't read through the entire thing. This is just ChatGPT summarizing it. It sounds like that's maybe not at least provable definitively in here. Although I'm sure that there's lots of people that are going to speculate that there's a possibility that could have still been the case. So Jimmy Hoffa, more smoke and mirrors. I don't know. JFK was arguing with the CIA at the time about the planning of the Bay of Pigs invasion. I understand JFK was against the idea of the Bay of Pigs invasion. Yeah, I think... Oh, you know what? Oops. Sorry, TikTok. I was trying to keep you guys involved. Apologize. All right, so... Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, next piece, intelligence agency reports and their implications. Let's talk about that. Internal reviews of agency lapses. The documents illuminate how U.S. agencies scrambled in the aftermath. In one newly disclosed memo, Hoover fretted about persuading, quote, the public that Oswald is the real assassin, end quote, after Ruby killed Oswald. A candid admission of concern that conspiracy theorists would flourish if the case against Oswald wasn't seen as ironclad. This suggests the FBI was very aware from day one of public skepticism and the need for transparency, even if ironically many files then remained classified for decades. U.S. agencies scrambled in the aftermath. Hoover fretted about persuading the public that Oswald is the real assassin after Ruby killed Oswald. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine whether or not they were involved in Ruby offing Oswald, I would imagine that would be a concern regardless, because he's like, oh, great, this looks real good. This looks great on us. So if the FBI didn't have anything to do with offing Oswald via or through Jack Ruby, then yeah, they'd be like, oh, this is great. Now we're going to look like we organized this whole thing and orchestrated it. But if they did do that, then they're going to be worried that people are going to find out about that too. So it's like, it doesn't seem like there's any definitive evidence, but again, it's just another thing up in the air. Some more smoke and mirror stuff. I doubt there will be any good stuff. Nothing will elaborate on a second bullet further than the released autopsies. Yeah, I saw a video the other day about how there was one bullet fired from the back that went through Kennedy's back, went through the Texas governor's chest, went through the governor's arm, and into his thigh, apparently. At least one round. But it looks like in the video, like if you guys have seen the video of the JFK assassination, I can't show it on here, obviously, but the video, the Zapruder film. So in the Zapruder film, it looks like he got hit in the back of the head. Like, and I know for a fact everybody is tracking, like his wife got stuff like matter, like brain matter and stuff all over her, all over her, right? And skull fragments and stuff like that. So it's like, what are we talking about here? What? So I don't know. Pretty crazy. So let's see here. All right, next piece. Lost FBI files and new discoveries. All right. A headline revelation in 2025 was the FBI's admission that it had found 2,400 previously unrecognized JFK-related records during a fresh sweep of its archives. These files, overlooked for years, were transferred to the National Archives for declassification. The FBI did not specify what these documents contain, but their discovery so late, 60 years post-assassination, highlights the disorganization or possible concealment within government records keeping. It raised eyebrows. What else might have been missed? Analysts note that many of these newly found files could be routine administrative memos, duplicate reports, but the sheer number underscores why researchers long suspected that not everything had been accounted for. On a similar note, the CIA was compelled to explain why it withheld certain files for so long, including the notorious set of 44 documents related to Agent George, is that Joannides? Joannides? I don't know who that guy is. Do you guys know who George Joannides is? I've never heard of that name before. That's the first time. All roads lead to Roswell, 1947. Linningen says the FBI sucks at a job. I mean, human beings are going to make mistakes, man. No matter what organization they're a part of. So, it's possible that there maybe have been problems and that people made mistakes. And yeah, there's always that possibility for sure. But who knows? Let's see. I don't know who George Joannides is, though. Anything that is put under secret for decades clearly shows the people are not in charge. They are. Can you please tell me what you mean about MK Ultra and Fort Bragg? Oh yeah, I remember somebody talking about MK Ultra being involved around Fort Bragg or something like that. Fumble as their file master, evidence keeper. Yeah, definitely a fumble for sure. Definitely a big old fumble, ball fumble. Wow, there's a little bit more here. Let's see. Okay, so we just read through the lost discoveries. All right, several reports now. Oh, see, CIA operations in Mexico and beyond. Several reports now public provide insight into CIA operations monitoring Oswald and foreign contacts. A CIA cable from October 10th of 1963, sourced to a reliable and sensitive source in Mexico, tracked Oswald's meetings at the Soviet embassy in Mexico City. This confirms that the CIA had stringently surveilled Oswald's movements in Mexico, collecting intel on his attempts to contact Cuban and Soviet officials. The implication is that the CIA headquarters knew Oswald, a known defector and pro-Castro sympathizer, was active abroad just weeks before Dallas, yet this information was not effectively shared with agencies that might have heightened security for the president. The files also show close collaboration between U.S. and Mexican intelligence in that era, with Mexican security services feeding information on Oswald's contacts to the CIA, a relationship only hinted at previously. In sum, the new documents highlight that Oswald was not, quote, off the radar, which means he was on their radar, right? If he's not off the radar, that means he was on the radar. So, let's see. Both the FBI and CIA had pieces of the puzzle. His defection, his communist agitation, his Mexico trip, but those pieces were never put together in time. Where are the files? I will post them right here in the chat. That's the files right there. If you want to peruse them at some time at your own leisure, you're welcome to. Have fun. Have a beautiful time. Let's see. What's going on over here? Are we offline? We're not offline, are we? Weird. Says we're offline. Strange. Okay. Let's see. So we looked through that. Significant figures and organizations newly uncovered. George Joannides and Cuban exiles. Among the most notable new disclosures are files on CIA officer George Joannides, I guess, whose role was hidden for decades. Joannides ran a covert CIA program in 1963 that funded and guided the Cuban Student Directorate, Directorio Revolucionario Estudiantil, geez, that's a mouthful, DRE, an anti-Castro exile group. Astonishingly, members of the DRE, or the DRE, had direct encounters with Oswald in New Orleans a few months before the assassination. They debated him and publicized his pro-Castro activities. The 2025 release includes 44 documents on Joannides and this operation. These files can confirm that a CIA-funded group tangled with Oswald in 1963, a fact that was withheld from the Warren Commission and even the later House assassination inquiry. The implication is profound. The CIA was aware of Oswald's Cuban-related antics pre-assassination, but did not divulge its own connection to those events. While there's no evidence Joannides or the DRE knew of or aided Oswald's plot, let's see. The revelation of this link has given new fodder to theories that elements of the U.S. government were indirectly intertwined with Oswald's path. Okay. Well, that certainly is interesting. So they had encountered him. Their assets had encountered him in New Orleans a few months before the assassination. And he was on their radar. So that is interesting. D equals G. Can someone give a brief summary? That's what I'm doing here. So this right here, if you're just joining us right now, I typed in, I don't know if you're just joining us, but if you are, we're going to go up here real quick. We're almost done. I typed in the actual web address for the newly released JFK files today, and it said, are you looking for specific information about the JFK files released in 2025, such as key findings, newly declassified documents, historical impact, or expert analyses? And I said key findings never before released. So that way ChatGPT would analyze all of the documents and summarize it for me rather than me have to read through all of it, because everybody's going to be reading over this for days. Or there's going to be people that are doing the same thing I'm doing and using AI to summarize it for them, because it's faster and you can get the information quicker. Now, there's going to be people that are going to like hand go through these, like some people that are like hardcore into this stuff. But I figured this was a quicker way to do it and a way that we could all get the information fast, right? So anyway, let's keep going. Chicago mob activity in Cuba. Interesting. Didn't know the Chicago mob was involved in Cuba. The files also shine light on organized crime figures previously at the fringes of JFK's assassination lore. Newly released documents reveal that Chicago mob bosses were actively training Cuban exiles in 1963 on U.S. soil. That certainly is interesting. In Chicago, mob-connected former cop Richard Kane helped recruit and drill a small covert force of anti-Castro Cuban exiles, essentially a secret militia, aiming to eventually infiltrate Cuba. This operation, backed by Chicago underworld leaders like Sam Momo Giancana, was an effort to protect the Mafia's gambling rackets in Havana by overthrowing Castro. These details, Chicago area training camps Mafia paid military instructors, were not public until now. That's new. Didn't know that. Never heard that before. So the mob was training Cuban exiles in 1963 on U.S. soil in order to help infiltrate Cuba, because they wanted to the mob wanted to protect their gambling rackets in Havana. And the CIA was like, yeah, sure. If you train a secret militia for us to overthrow the government over there, we'll let you run your gambling rackets. That's cool. That's pretty wild. That's an interesting revelation. All right. Where do we leave off here? They confirmed that the mob had its own vested interest in JFK-era Cuba policy since Castro had closed their casinos. Some assassination researchers have long hypothesized that Mafia involvement in JFK's death as retaliation for his administration's crackdown and for allowing Castro's regime to survive. The new files reinforced the Mafia's intense anti-Castro activity, but more importantly, investigators did not find a smoking gun linking the Chicago outfit to Kennedy's murder. Kane's exploits ended in failure, and he was himself murdered by the mob in 1973. Oh, wow, Richard Kane. I didn't know that. Okay. Well, illustrating more of a backdrop of intrigue in the early 1960s. Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that the mob was so involved in Cuba or anti-Cuba policy with the CIA. That's wild. That's an interesting revelation. That's new. That's new information right there for sure. So let's see. All right. Previously hidden names. The 2025 release unearths the names of several informants, agents, and persons of interest that were redacted in earlier publications. These include foreign intelligence contacts, such as a reliable source in Mexico who tipped the CIA about Oswald's embassy visits, now understood to be a high-placed Mexican surveillance asset. Interesting. Another example is the identity of a KGB defector who provided insight on Oswald's lack of Soviet handlers, a former agent whose analysis is summarized in the files. Additionally, the name of U.S. officials involved in secret programs, like those who greenlit the Mafia Castro plots, appear in full. For instance, documents now name officers like William Harvey, who led some CIA anti-Castro efforts, and others in memos that were once heavily redacted. While these individuals may not be household names, their appearance in unedited form lets historians piece together a more complete chain of command of covert projects orbiting the JFK saga. Overall, the unmasking of these figures helps remove the shroud of mystery around how various strands, Cuba, the mob, intelligence agencies, and Oswald intersected. So there were ties. There were ties between all these people because they kind of operated in similar areas, but there weren't ties in the fact that it's like, hey, they're at least based on what the summarization from ChatGPT is saying, that there is not like any direct ties showing that the CAA or the CIA was directly controlling Oswald to commit the murder that he committed. So anyway, let's keep moving. We're about 2/3 of the way through. All right, let's see here. Impact on the historical understanding of JFK's assassination. Okay, confirmation over contradiction. The consensus view of JFK's assassination that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, firing 3 shots from the Texas School Book Depository, remains intact after this document dump. So there's going to be some people that are upset about that because there's a lot of people that believe that that's nonsense and believe there is 2 shooters. There's a lot of people that believe that. But I mean, based on the summarization that ChatGPT gave me back after it browsed through all of the documents, it says that there is no evidence that shows there's more than the 1 shooter. But let's keep reading. Maybe there's something else. Historians have not found evidence in the new files that fundamentally alters the Warren Commission's conclusion. As JFK biographer Frederick Logeval noted, nothing in this release dramatically overturns our understanding of the events in Dallas. Instead, the primary narrative is corroborated. Oswald's known movements and intent to kill the president are reinforced. If anything, the files about his attempted post-assassination escapes route to Cuba strengthen the case that he premeditated the act on his own. New depth and context. Although no grand conspiracy is proven, the 2025 files significantly enrich the context of the JFK assassination era. They laid bare the Cold War environment of paranoia and cloak and dagger operations in which this tragedy unfolded. We now see that clearly that multiple agencies were juggling urgent issues, tracking communists, plotting against Castro, managing informants, and that bureaucratic missteps and silos allowed a figure like Oswald to slip through the cracks despite being on watch lists. So there is a possibility that because back then, like, the agencies didn't communicate well with each other. So if the FBI was working some stuff and they were tracking him and he was on their radar, they may not have shared that information with the CIA necessarily, or they may not have shared all of the information, or at least not whole information enough so that they were all on the same page. Because even now, it's still hard for these interagencies to share stuff because of classification levels and like who's allowed to view what document and like where you're viewing the document, whether it's in a compartmentalized facility or whatever, you know what I mean? So if there's issues with communication now in 2025, guarantee back then in the 60s, there was definitely miscommunication and poor communication happening occasionally. So tough to say 100%, but let's see here. The Kennedy assassination can now be studied with a fuller understanding of U.S. covert activities, from the CIA's secret war on Castro and willingness to partner with gangsters, to the FBI's internal pressures and occasional bungling, lost evidence, ignored warnings. This broader picture doesn't exonerate those agencies' failures, but it tends to support that incompetence and secrecy rather than active collusion in JFK's murder with the main culprits behind lingering mysteries. Okay, so even ChatGPT kind of said the same thing I was saying. Maybe is like, incompetence and not communicating with each other rather than like actively colluding with him. However, again, I don't know. There's like, I don't have enough information. This is just based on what ChatGPT summarized, everything up to this date and the new JFK files released recently. And, I don't know. Also, for those of you that are asking for the JFK files link, it's in the chat right here. This is a joke. I don't know. Phone's at 1%. I'm sorry. I guarantee the FBI, CIA had visited Oswald. Yeah, I would imagine so. I would imagine 100%. So if they were tracking him that hard, they were like opening his mail, guarantee they visited him at least once and had a conversation with him. Although it hasn't said anything about that in the summary. I would imagine that they probably talked to him or had a conversation with him at least once. Let's see. I'm going to ask my AI bestie if they think there was a second shooter after this. Yeah. Ask your AI bestie. Maybe they'll have something interesting. I don't know. Anyway, so let's see here. We'll keep going. We're almost to the end of this, of the what's it called? The summary of the Chat GPT summary. All right, conspiracy theories addressed and persisting. Many popular conspiracy theories find both ammunition and refutation in the new records. For example, proponents of a CIA-orchestrated plot might point to the Joannides revelation, CIA's indirect contact with Oswald via Cuban exiles, as tantalizing evidence of a CIA link. Likewise, those suspicious of a mob hit on JFK will note the confirmed hostility of figures like Gianca toward the Kennedy administration and Cuba. At the same time, the files provide official answers that debunk several theories. The KGB in Cuba appear to have had no hand and even feared they'd be blamed. The CIA had shown it had no direct dealings with Oswald, and the much speculated missing CIA documents about Dallas have largely been accounted for. The CIA had shown it had no direct dealings, at least based on this release. But I'm sure that there's folks out there that are going to be like, yeah, I don't believe that. You know what I mean? I can't say whether or not they did or not, but I would imagine that they had at least, when they say no direct dealings, what they're claiming is like, hey, he wasn't a CIA asset, and maybe he wasn't. But I guarantee that they had to have. I don't know how they couldn't have possibly interacted with this guy at least once. They had a lot of people that had kind of crossed paths with him and interacted with him. So I don't know. I don't know if they had an actual agent speak with him or visit him. It seems unlikely that they had no dealings with him at all. Definitely no evidence here based on this summary showing that they were directly tied, like he was an asset to them. But I don't know. It's tough. Quit. Stuart. I don't know what's going on in the chat. There's probably some wild stuff happening, but I can't pay attention to all of it. It's too much. All right, let's see here. To be sure, diehard skeptics will likely seize on any lingering redactions or unexplained oddities, but the scope for novel conspiracy narratives is narrowing. Importantly, the full transparency might help lay to rest at least some suspicions by showing exactly what was kept secret and why, in many cases to hide embarrassing tactics or protect sources during the Cold War, not to conceal the plot against Kennedy. And that's possible too, because if they're releasing stuff to the public that they don't want the Soviets to see, obviously they have to redact it. They would do the same thing right now if they didn't want a foreign adversary to see information. Even if they want the American public to see it, maybe they would redact it because they don't want a foreign adversary to get that information if it could be, potentially lead to a possible damage of national security. So I can imagine, I get it. You know what I'm saying? I understand. It makes sense. Let's see here. Okay, public and official reactions. The release has been hailed by many as a victory for historical transparency. Even members of the Kennedy family have expressed approval. For instance, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. praised the move, saying it brings, quote, more transparency, end quote, and fulfills the government's promise to, quote, tell the truth to the American people about everything, end quote. Scholars and researchers are poring over the trove, and while they don't expect earth-shattering revelations, they welcome the chance to verify details and resolve lingering questions. With an estimated 95% of all JFK-related records now public, the JFK assassination is entering a new phase, one where debate can center on interpretation of known facts rather than speculation about hidden secrets. Okay. In summary, well, this looks like this is the end here. Yeah. In summary, the 2025 declassification of JFK's files has not rewritten the history of President Kennedy's assassination, but it has filled in critical gaps and dispelled some shadows that loomed over the case. We have gained unprecedented insight into the actions and inaction of the CIA, FBI, and other entities surrounding the tragedy. The enduring puzzles, why did Oswald do it? Could he have been stopped? Are now better understood against the backdrop of the clandestine 1960s. While no sinister conspiracy has been definitively proven by these files, the legend of the JFK assassination will likely persist, albeit now on a foundation of evidence that is more complete and accessible than ever before. Okay. So, yeah, the sources that ChatGPT pulled from for this summary is the National Archives JFK assassination records releases, which is what came out today, and the previous ones. NPR and Reuters reports on the 2025 file release, contemporary news analyses of newly disclosed documents, Fox News Dallas, ABC 7 Chicago, Associated Press, Times of Israel, and historical data from prior releases and investigations. These references document the key points above and provide further reading into specific documents and findings. So that's the summary. That's the whole summary right there. So I don't know. I mean, there definitely wasn't any, like, based on the summary from ChatGPT, there doesn't look like there was any, like, earth-shattering, groundbreaking, oh my God, I can't believe this happened secrets. There are some interesting ones. One specifically that I find interesting is the fact that the mob was working to train militia. The fact that the Chicago mob was actively involved in training a secret militia of Cuban exiles in 1963 on U.S. soil is pretty crazy, if you ask me. That is a pretty wild thing. Michael Corleone, yeah, exactly. So that's pretty crazy. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's an interesting one. So I don't know. I like that there's some, like, you know, little bits that are kind of filling in some gaps that have been kind of like not, we didn't know that gap existed because nobody was like wondering about that fact, because that's not like part of what people are looking for. People when this came out, people wanted to know, is the CIA complicit in the assassination? Is the FBI complicit in the assassination? Were they somehow controlling Oswald or Jack Ruby? Were they affiliated with them directly? Was Jack Ruby or was Oswald a CIA asset? It doesn't answer that in this. In fact, it says in this summary that there's no evidence that directly correlates the two. There's no evidence that they were directly interacting. Again, personal opinion, I feel like they had to have interacted somehow. There's no evidence in here showing they did, but I feel like if they were tracking him that hard and they were reading his mail and he was on their radar that hard, that they would have at least visited the dude. You know, like, if you type in something on Google today that's like questionable and the FBI sees it, you might get visited. You know what I'm saying? So, like, if a guy is like trying to figure out how to commit this crime that he committed and try to assassinate a sitting U.S. president, you would think that if the FBI or the CIA caught wind of it, they'd be like, we should probably visit this guy. We should probably knock on the door while he's eating his Cheerios and be like, hey, we should probably have a conversation. We should probably sit down and talk for a second. But again, there's nothing in here that says that he definitively was working for them or on their behalf or in, like, colluding with them in any way. Again, I'm not like a scholar on the JFK assassination. This is just something I find interesting. I think a lot of you probably find it interesting as well, because it's a big topic. There's a lot of people want to know this. It's been like, what, 60, 70 years, 70 years, man. And there's a lot of, well, it was 40, 50, 60, a little bit over 60. Yeah. A little over 60 years. What, 65, 6, 7, 8, 68 years. I can't math in public. Don't fault me for that. But yeah. Anyway, I think this is interesting. I'm hoping that maybe there's other people out there who actually peruse this entire thing in its entirety and will find out a little bit more information that maybe ChatGPT had overlooked or didn't see out of how many documents were there? There's 1,000. Look, there's 1,100. Hold on. 1,123 entries in here. 1,123 entries. And they're all like PDFs like this. You pull them up and it's just like photocopies of like super old documents that, like, some of them are like hard to read and stuff like that. Let's see another one here. Just random one. Yeah, like, look, this is just a random memo for the record. It says, at 0900 this morning, I talked with Frank Freiberg recently, returned to cause Helsinki Warren Commission inquiry concerning the timetable of Oswald's stay in Finland in October of 1959, including his contacts with the Soviet consulate there. Copy of the commission letter of 25 May 64 and state cable of 22 May 64 attached. Freiberg gave me the following information. It takes 25 minutes to drive from the airport to downtown Helsinki. By taxi, it would take no more than 5 minutes to reach the Soviet consulate. The Soviet consulate probably closed at 1300 hours local time on Saturdays in 1959. Passenger lists manifest that the U.S. consulate in Helsinki are retained for 6 months only and are then destroyed. Mr. Robert Fulton, CIA, was U.S. consular official there at the time. Yeah, so this is the type of stuff that's in there. Like, it's like not going to give you any super thick, definitive, like juicy stuff. It's just like a bunch of like everything pertaining to it. It could be arbitrary information that may not necessarily have any like grandiose release of information, but that's kind of the type of stuff that you're going to find in this when you're going through it. If you go through it by yourself, you know, like all this stuff, like these routing and record sheets, this is all arbitrary stuff that, yeah, maybe it's still part of the record, but nobody cares about that. Nobody's like, wow, look at that routing record sheet. They dated it correctly at the same time, and all the dates line up, and all the correct people signed off on it as it was being routed up the chain of command. Like, nobody cares about that. Like, they're interested in like all the meat and all this stuff. The meat, like all this stuff. Like, and some of the stuff I don't understand. Like, I don't even know what any of this stuff is. It's just like a lot of it's just arbitrary paperwork, right? Like talking about the Warren Commission's report on the assassination of President Kennedy focused attention on the magnitude of the problem involved in the protection of the chief executive. As you know, it is our responsibility overseas and in headquarters to render every support possible to the Secret Service in the conduct of its statutory responsibilities in the United States, and especially when the president travels abroad. Just, you know, part of the Warren Commission from Chief Kudov to the chiefs of all the stations. Okay, so this looks like it was sent. This was a letter sent out to all the chiefs of probably all the U.S. consulates around the world, because these are all locations like Honolulu, Manila, Melbourne, Okinawa, Dakar, Freetown, Kampala, Lagos, Lome, Lusaka. That was a lot of places. Cairo, Beirut, Baghdad, Ankara, Kabul, Karachi, Kathmandu, Kuwait, New Delhi, Tehran. Oh yeah, this is before that was this. That's crazy. So this was before the Iranian embassy got overran, before the Iranian Revolution. Kind of an interesting side note. Yeah. Wow. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, like I said, this I'll post it again in the chat just so you guys have it. If you want to look it up, it's up to you. There it is, right there. I appreciate you guys joining. While we read through that quick summarization from ChatGPT. I don't know if if you guys got anything out of it. I got a little bit out of it, kind of interesting. And yeah, so that's it.